All right, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today, learning more about the truth behind using social for lead generation. We have CMO Scott Smith here and Devon Wijesinghe from Insightpool. So to kick things off, just want to do a little housekeeping and let everyone know that on the right side of the panel under chat, you're welcome to ask questions as well as join us on Twitter. Follow Insightpool and Lucas Group to join in on hashtag social truth. All right, well, we're going to kick things off and welcoming Devon here to get things started.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for taking the time today. And Scott, appreciate you being on with us as well.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so I think it's really cool because Scott and Lucas Group was one of Insightpool's first clients when we had this tiny little office at the Tech Village when it wasn't even built yet. So we've had a lot of fun growing with you. So it's kind of cool to see a lot of the fruits of the labor, and we're excited to share it with you guys today. And why I'm in particularly excited about Scott is that he takes a very data-driven approach to marketing and specifically to how that actually leads to sales. And it's, I think, I can't remember what it is, getting creative speak to be wallet speak. I think that's one of your taglines, right, Scott, or did I butcher that?
No, that's right. We turn creative speak into wallet speak. And the other corny axiom that we have is, in God we trust, everybody else bring data.
Yeah, that seems about right. And what's really cool is that there's this whole notion of social lead generation and so forth that's constantly around. But when you dig deeper, it just seems like there's a lot of awareness, but not a lot of people are actually doing it. And one of the really cool things that Scott has done has showcased to us as well as other partners involved how Lucas Group has actually used social as a derivative of a number of different things inside of a strategy to create lead generation. So it's really fun. You guys are going to walk through the actual specifics of it. But one of the things that's really good to remember is there is no silver bullet. And it does take time, it does take effort, and it takes content, and it takes maybe a couple different vendors as well working together. So Scott, I'm not going to butcher an introduction for you, but obviously I'm a huge fan, but I was wondering if you wouldn't mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, sure. So I am the CMO for an executive recruiting firm called Lucas Group. We have about 350 plus salespeople in 15 different cities. And we focus on staff level to manager to all the way to C-level across multiple functions ranging from accounting to marketing to legal to technology. And, as Devon said, I'm a numbers guy. One of the things that we do here, and we measure everything we treasure, and that comes from my background in being in sales. So everything that we do around here is about either generating leads, driving deal velocity, or expanding wallet share. And that's what, aligns us really well with the CFO, the CEO, and our sales force. So that's a little bit about my background.
Well, thanks, Scott. No, I appreciate it. So why don't we go ahead and keep moving forward. And Scott, I'm going to hand the speaking over to you, and we can probably control the slides if that's okay with you as well.
Yeah, that would be great because sometimes my technical prowess on slide decks doesn't work as well.
Good thing we've got reinforcements. So we'll go ahead and get started. You can take over.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, everyone, and I hope we provide some value to you over the next hour. As Devon said, we're really excited about what we've been able to develop with this kind of demand generation, multi-channel approach. If you think about it, one size doesn't fit all now because right now in the marketplace, every aspect of who we are, when we are, where we are, and why we conduct business is being revolutionized. And I think it's just not for Lucas Group, even though we have a very unique approach because we have B2B business selling to businesses, but we also have B2C where we're selling to candidates. So we actually have two streams of people that we have to target. But if you think about what's going on in the marketplace right now, there are actually 5 generations out there. There's traditionalists, there's baby boomers, there's Gen X, there's Gen Y, and there's now Gen Z starting to enter in the collegiate area and will be entering the workforce within the next few years. And so you have this huge generational shift, right? I mean, right now we all know that there's 10,000 baby boomers that are retiring on a daily basis. And you have, by 2020, 50% of the workforce is going to be Gen Y. So you have those changes that are occurring. So you have to be able to target each one of those generational groups and those personas within each one of those. The next thing you have is you have a technology aspect of social, mobile, and search. And, even my CFO and CEO one time said, how's, for B2B, is it really changing? And I can tell you now, when I first got here 5 years ago, 3% of our web traffic was mobile, and it's now almost 40%. So it's a huge increase in just 5 years. And then the last piece that we have to have kind of this how to leverage social media and have this layered approach and demand through a multi-channel approach is the buying process has drastically changed, right? 60 to 70% of the buyer's journey happens before they ever talk to a salesperson. And I think about it now, when I first bought a car, I actually went to a car dealership at night, so I wouldn't have to talk to a salesperson, right? I didn't want to see them, but I'd go around and look at the cars. And then I went and talked to the salespeople. I did all of that online. I walk into a dealership. I tell them exactly what I want, where I want it, and I go, by the way, you have it in your inventory, and this is the price point I want to pay. So it's definitely changed how the buyer's journey approaches, customers or clients, I should say now. So if you go to the next slide. So if you think about it, I think what's really, unique is, Devon talked about when we first started working together, and it was, a lot of people were going, okay, why are you going with this young group? It's only, I think, like you guys had 4 or 5 people at the time, and I think now you're over 60. But by going to someone like, Insightpool and going to other companies such as them, you find that's where the innovation is, right? The larger organizations, there's a lot of bureaucracy, and there's not as much innovation going on with those. So that's why, from my standpoint, I like going with players like Insightpool. But what's really great is, I worked at Siemens, I worked at SAP before, and I know how big organizations work. But now, because of, leveraging technology, leveraging search, leveraging social, and integrating those, we have just as much ability to compete against a Fortune 500, and because it's game changing, right? Because now we don't have to spend a lot of different money on a lot of different advertising that we don't know if it works or not. By taking the data that we gain from like Insightpool and others, we're able to leverage that and then integrate that data and then amplify the effects, and it allows us to compete and spend our dollars in a much more efficient way. So I think that's one of the big things we have there. And if you think about it, as we talked about in the marketplace earlier, we're building programs that really capture interest, drive engagement, and we want people to react, and then we achieve with revenue. And that's our big goal here. One of the big things you'll always hear us talking about is we want to generate leads, drive deal velocity. So let's talk about your challenge. I think right now we've got a lot of challenges going on out there. We all face it. CFOs, CEOs want you to do more with less. They're always looking to see how you're measuring. That's why we always are looking at data. So let's talk about, we're living in this digital, intelligent, adaptive economy. So let's talk about each one of those. I think you go to the next slide, we can talk about digital. We believe that, with digital, the best way to harness this data is to kind of integrate it with best-of-breed technologies and platforms. We've been approached, and when I was at other organizations, I really developed this best-of-breed approach. You can go work with a large group that says, hey, we can do it all for you. But I think, no one does everything well. And that's why we work with partners like Insightpool. They do what they do very well. As a matter of fact, they're the best. And then you look at the intelligent piece. Again, we look at data. It's a great way to, analyze and break it down, and then we really apply it to our business. But, a lot of these guys out there, the big thing I like about Insightpool and the other partners that we'll be talking about is they just don't use artificial intelligence or an algorithm. They actually put a human element to it that provides us insight. And then the other piece is, from a demand standpoint, is the adaptive piece. You know, this human touch really enables us to kind of apply a third piece to the puzzle and lets us be adaptive. And what we're able to do is gain intelligence from each one of these partners or these vendors, and there's 4 of them that we work with, Insightpool being one of them, but it allows us to take the gained intelligence that we get from each one, and we look at our prospects, our connectors, our influencers, and our customers. And then we take that data and we're able to analyze it and then figure out where they are and choose the right message at the right time at the right place. So demand. So let's talk about what demand is. I think the big thing for us is it's an acronym, and it's a digital engagement methodology for advancement of nurture development. That's a mouthful. I think it took us a whole 2 days to come up with that acronym. But, you know, we really just defined it as kind of a comprehensive integrated marketing methodology that really incorporates social, search, digital, content, public relations, our client and candidate and target data, and then we kind of architect it in a very detailed, actionable plan that allows us to target specific prospects, clients, and candidates. And I think what's really exciting about this is when we first got here 5 years ago, we were only bringing in about 34 leads a month to the salespeople. And when we started, and by the time we got to leveraging or creating demand, we were only around 228 leads a month, kind of an aggregate. We're now north of 300. So it's about a 40% increase since we launched this program. And we actually have reduced our costs in a couple of different ways. First of all, our cost per ad for pay-per-click have dropped by 38%. And then another advertising channel, by using social and the insight or intelligence and data and from Insightpool and others, we've been able to decrease our cost per action by 62%. So for all of you guys on the call, when you can go to your CEO or your CFO and say, hey guys, we've increased our leads from 223 a month on average to north of 300, like 320 a month, and we've also decreased our cost per action by 62%, it gets their attention. And so that's really the secret sauce of all of this that we're showing you today. Do you want to go to the next slide? All right, so as far, again, as this multi-channel approach, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but just to let you know, we do integrate kind of a best-of-breed technology and platforms. That's the big key. And that's why we have partners like Insightpool with the others that we use. And then we use the data. You know, for instance, data is kind of like glasses. Glasses make you look smart, but data is just like glasses, right? Unless you use it the correct way and you really look at the data and try to analyze it, it's not going to help you be smarter. And we really use that data to try to figure out how can we generate leads by using a multi-channel platform. How can we push deals through the pipeline faster by mitigating risk for the prospects, clients, and candidates by giving them content that maybe addresses their concerns? And then once they become a customer, how do we nurture that customer or candidate throughout the life cycle of our relationship? And that's where this kind of multi-channel approach works. You know, and what we look at it is, you know, we look at content as king around here in the marketing department. We talk about that we're a publisher that happens to do executive recruiting. And we look at content kind of like a Thanksgiving dinner. And I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. So for content, if we do something, we try to repurpose it and reuse it in multi-different channels. So for instance, if we were to have a webinar, then we would take this messaging, this question. We might create a white paper out of this. And then we'll take that white paper and we'll develop certain tweets from that. And then we'll repurpose that. And then we might do a video of that. And then we'll put that out there. So by repurposing, it's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner. You get Thanksgiving turkey on Thursday. On Friday, you get sandwiches, and by Sunday, you're getting turkey hash. So that's how we repurpose and reuse our content. It's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner. And then that gives us this kind of layered methodology, not only to generate leads, but to really push through and push the deals through the pipeline faster, which speed kills. And you can notice that, having a sales background, I really care about helping the salespeople, use our marketing, because that's one of the biggest things that happens out there, I think, as marketers, is we get into, the feeds and speeds and start really talking about a lot of things, that impressions and cost per action and all those kind of acronyms, and it glazes over their ideas. So we keep it really simple. Generate leads, drive deal velocity, expand wallet share. They get it. And then all of our marketing materials or metrics drive to the two big numbers that we care about, which is revenue and EBITDA. And, some other companies, when I was at Siemens, it was about revenue per employee. So we worked on that. So whatever your business environment is, you need to take your marketing metrics and turn them into what your CFO and CEO care about from a financial standpoint. To achieve this, I think the process in integrating human capital, the big thing for us, again, and I think the secret sauce is here, is we have a hybrid approach. Demand is an applied methodology. It's not a technology, even though we have 4 great partners that we use. And we really try to have these different partners because we don't want to have just one solution and be beholden to them, right? Your accounting department and your procurement group might like it because it's a streamlined process. They have one person they get to send a bill to. But for us, it was really building kind of a hybrid team of best of breed. And, now with technology and cloud computing out there, it makes it really easy to connect technologies together as well. And then with this, for all of you out there on the call, it's kind of a plug-and-play nature. So as companies like Insightpool grow and they continue to, provide intelligence and innovation within them, some of our other partners might decide that, they've reached a certain level and they don't want to innovate anymore. Well, if that's the case, we can pull them out and put somebody else in. So that's a great plug-and-play approach. The other thing is it's very elastic. So if there's new innovation, we can put that innovation in there and bring in a new partner, and it actually plug and play. And, for us, what's really great about this is, Devon's got, and I'll let Devon talk about this for a second because I think this is really critical with this team. And I don't mean to throw you on the side, but what I think is really great is the account team that works with our team here, and that is the cadence of the meetings, the insight they bring to us, because when they come in and work with our other partners, they're not beholden to kind of group think. They don't have to drink their own bathwater. They push each other, and we kind of have these intellectual food fights because they come from different groups and they help improve each other. Devon, you want to talk about that real quick, just from how you guys use some of the intelligence or human factor in this?
Yeah, I think the reality is particularly in our space with social media, people consider that a particular category, but all social media truly is just another area where humanity exists. And truthfully, you could do all the best targeting and all of the best possible niche specific audiences that you're looking for, and then if you don't contextually say the right message, it doesn't matter. It will fall flat. And in particular with social, it actually becomes negative instead of just neutral. If you say the wrong message in email, it's kind of neutral and it'll go away. Well, that really is that's a human touch and a human element that comes with it. And I think that, a lot of businesses have been built on this theory of, you might be software as a service. And I think particularly in this new age and these new markets that we're going into, you almost really want to be software with a service. So as a company, we really embrace that because by keeping people involved, we get to create these types of relationships and create the real process that helps drive innovation, and that is with human-to-human connections.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, just to kind of recap on the secret sauce, I mean, I think this slide really encapsulates it. But, the true innovation lies not only with the technology partners, but also lies in the process. Because a lot of times people can think innovation is just a tool or technology, but where I see the innovation for us is in this process, because we're able to kind of blend a programmatic automation with human insight, and then it amplifies the engagement and then maximizes our ROI. So just to recap, like I said, there's thanks to cloud computing, we have that where we can bridge and integrate. We also have plug and play where we can bring in and take out partners if needed. And then we also have a very best of breed model that allows us not to just be beholden to one group. So if you look at this slide here, this is kind of the depiction of what we look at as demand. As you can see again at the very bottom, you have white papers, blogs, videos, infographics. We do a small to medium-sized business survey on the economic trends and hiring. And we take all of that. And again, content is king, and that is the foundation, and we repurpose it in multiple different ways. We have a team of about 12 writers that are constantly working with our 350 salespeople, writing and creating all of this material. And then as far as if you look at these partners here, we have Conductor, who is a search engine optimization, Insightpool. We also work with LinkedIn as a platform, and then we work with another group, Radium One, and then Ion. And that's where our landing pages are to try to capture, when people download white papers. And then let's talk about each one of those steps. If you look at listening, and this is where kind of the innovation comes into, we begin with search engine optimization. When I first started in marketing, we would do focus groups, we would do surveys, but now with Google, we can, and SEO, we can really understand what people are looking for and what's driving traffic to a website. If you think about it, something outside of recruiting, one of my friends who works at a huge furniture company, they wanted to elevate their CEO, and I'm sure you can appreciate this. The CEO comes to them and says, hey, I was talking to my wife, and instead of calling us a couch store, I want to be called a sofa store. We think it's more regal. So we need to change our marketing. But they go, but couch gets 10 times the amount of hit versus sofa on the website. So which would you prefer? Would you want more traffic, more leads, more people coming in, or do you want to sound regal? So that's where SEO can really help out. We've used it. We go after either large phrases or specifically long tail phrases, because we find that long tail really is what drives those leads. So that's the first area that we look at. That's the listening part. The next part is really working with Insightpool and looking at reporters, bloggers, influencers, connectors. What we want to be able to use is Twitter, and really look and kind of with this human knowledge help us classify targets, understand how they tie into our key audiences, and then with Insightpool, Devon, I'll let you talk about if you want to expand on your stream search to kind of monitor hashtag use, and then we are actually able to kind of tweet out direct messages to those individuals in real time that we're wanting to target.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, it goes back to the old adage of, particularly in the millennial generation, and certainly ones that are coming into careers that you guys are recruiting for, Scott, is, people love to buy but hate to be sold. And, the targeting, used by us is folks that are connected to the right audience. And that, can be very niche oriented, again, whether it be like folks that are engaged with military and coming off of leave. There's a number of different initiatives there from targeting, but it's also inside of that messaging. I think one thing that you guys do really well is you don't what I call show up and throw up. When you direct message or you mention folks, you're asking them for their opinion. You're asking them to get their thoughts. You're sharing some pieces of content. And that's another thing that I think makes it really powerful is, again, systems like ours really help figure out who that audience is. but making sure that you're being human, and you guys do that really well.
Well, thanks. And and one of the things that helps us do that is within each one of those demographics that I talked to you about earlier about traditionalists, Gen X, Gen Y, and we're starting to even start considering Gen Z because they're coming in the workforce, and we got to start preparing for that. Is we have personas, and it's old basic marketing, right? Have the personas, and so we actually, when we start thinking about the content, we actually look at it and go, okay, from a buyer's journey, how would Annie the admin feel about it, or frustrated Fred, or Harriet HR? We actually talk about those and pull those personas out and try to look at the content through their bifocals. And by doing that, you can really, it'll catch a lot of mistakes, and our team does a great job of that. The one thing about that, though, is, we also use other platforms like LinkedIn to kind of target. And one of the great things, because of this amplification of listening to what people are talking about or interested in, targeting them through Insightpool, we have now grown our LinkedIn followers by 77%, and we're north of almost 25,000 followers now. Same thing for Twitter. We've increased our Twitter followers over 50% in the last year, and that's because we're targeting them with the right message at the right place at the right time. So huge numbers there. I'll just touch on Radium One very quickly, but what they do is they do targeted advertising. One of the great things that they have is a post shortener that allows us to track, so think of it as a cookie on steroids. And so what we're able to do is once we start following individuals and we put on all of our content, we actually use Radium One shortener because we want to be able to track those individuals from a social standpoint. So they're able to say if Devon clicks on it and then somebody else in his network clicks on it, we can create a share graph of all those connections, and then they can help us pull those in and allow us to start doing programmatic advertising, targeting their friends of friends. And so that's a nice piece that we have there. And then we also have Ion, which again is our landing page that has all of our content where we capture emails, and then we're able to put that data in along with our web traffic data and our clients and candidates we have, and take all of that and put it into kind of our CRM and then target those individuals as well. So that's kind of the demand program very quickly. What's been great about it is, like I said, over the last year or so, or in the last 12 months, we've been able to optimize our spend. Our cost per action we decreased by $7. And then also and this is the great thing, again, we measure what our attributed revenue is from a marketing standpoint. And so we've gone from in the last year, we've gone from 28% of the company's revenue coming from marketing to 36%. And then we reduced our costs. So this is the real power of using innovation through a process and a methodology, and then really listening to what the market's telling you, and then taking that human intelligence that Devon was talking about, and then taking those together and then amplifying it off of each other. So we take the data from Conductor, then our team works with Insightpool's team to develop that, and then we amplify off of that, and then that helps us amplify off of LinkedIn. Having the one post shorteners, we're able to amplify off of that and get that intelligence leads to specific markets, which again, if you remember earlier, I think one of the great things, and Devon, you guys can probably talk much more about this, And we just talked about how we listen, we identify, we follow, we engage, and we segment and compel. Those are the 6 steps that chart really drove through. Again, we're using SEO to look at it from a search standpoint, understanding it. Then we identify who our audiences are through Insightpool. Then we follow them through Twitter. And then we engage with really good content that addresses their issues. And I can't tell you the amount of conversations and interactions we have with everyone through this. And then I think that's the big key for us in this respect, is this intelligence aspect, and the team such as Insightpool working with Radium One, our conductors team working with Radium One. We'll get together and we brainstorm together, and we'd actually have these intellectual food fights where each other will call each other out. And, you know, the great thing about having a startup or an innovative team like this, there's no bureaucracy. So, and that's what I love about these groups that we talk about. No one will do groupthink. They will call each other out. And that's another nice piece of this hybrid model that I highly recommend out there in the marketplace. And then, like I said, as you start taking, and this is the next big part, you'll start out with an idea or a program, and then you launch it. And then you find out, you know what, you're not as smart as everybody thought there was. And that's where the data comes in. And then you have to adapt, and you might have to change. But that's what's really great about using social and these other partners, and is that it's real time. So the next day, you can make changes on the dime. You don't have to wait for 30 days or 60 days or 120 days to kind of see what's going out with television or radio or newspapers. I mean, nobody reads newspapers anymore. But that's the great part about the social piece. So, Devon, do you guys want to talk about Insightpool a little bit, about how we work with you guys?
Yeah, I think, you know, the big thing to understand is that, again, it's almost like, think of it this way, because people hear the words influencer marketing and it maybe doesn't ring true to them individually, because maybe they don't use social as much or whatever that may be. But the truth is, I give a couple of examples. Is like, you know, I ask a room, how many people actually answer their phone if they don't recognize the number? Almost every hand basically says they do not. How many people, before they book a reservation at a restaurant, if it's one place they've never been before, look at the reviews? Every hand goes up. Same thing if you're booking a trip somewhere. Who looks at the reviews? People trust people more than they literally do anything else. And so we live in this world where brands, instead of having to just play on the backside of that, are now wanting to understand, how can I incite that behavior to create authentic human connections so that advocacy and that movement does drive business towards me, as opposed to it just happening as an adjunct. So if you think of a couple of examples that we're showcasing here for you guys, it's another great example of, well, obviously we found these people, for instance, like Damon and Ruchika, that are connected in the exact target audience, but wanting to get them involved in the conversation that has to do with minimum wage, et cetera. And you'll notice that, for example, the messages are different. They give some information or some statistics, but it's incredibly insightful when you look at it and how many people want to give their opinion, and then who all is seeing that. And so again, I think you talked about those clicks and where that comes from, that share graph. That's a real way to be able to capture that. And again, one thing to really denote, though, is that when you're talking about social and using social, as you can see, like in this particular slide, Lucas Group keeps the conversation going as well. And that's another key element. If you're going to drive lead gen, you cannot just go out there and sandblast a bunch of people and then expect that they'll automatically just come to you as if you would in email. You create conversations and you create engagement with the right people, because the world has seen that. Customer service is now a spectator sport. Well, so is marketing and so is sales. It's no longer just an interaction between one person. So in our particular model, obviously, we use a lot of data science to understand who should be engaged. But the data that's acquired is because people also were committed to the endeavor. So making sure that you've got a team that will respond, and not just even a team, just a person or a part-time person, whatever it looks like, so that conversation seems authentic, real, and it continues. Well, Scott, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. And if you look at these leads, this is what I was talking about. Again, I started out in selling. So I approach marketing probably a little different from most traditional marketers. This all came about when I was in sales operations and arguing with our marketing department at Siemens one day that they were spending money in the wrong places. And they said, well, if you're so smart about it, why don't you get into marketing? I said, okay. So that's how it all came about. But one of the things is that really came out of this, working with Insightpool and looking at Twitter and looking at how we engage is we realized that we as a company were doing a lot from a marketing standpoint, but we really needed to get our 350 plus salespeople in there. So here's a couple tips out there for the marketing guys. First of all, we created something called Social Selling in 7. Now, I can say this about salespeople because I once was one. They have the attention span of a gnat, right? Or a 3-year-old child. So what we try to do is create Social Selling in 7 and give them a tip a week for a period of time and talk to them about Twitter. So everything from how to create your own handle to what does a retweet mean or a hashtag to how to engage and how to follow. And then teach them how to share our content. So I want to give you an example, a real life example. So one of our recruiters actually had a white paper and had taken us up on it and done some blogs and was actually on Twitter and putting stuff out. So a senior VP of HR was working with another recruiting firm and they were getting nowhere. So like everybody else, the senior VP got frustrated and went online and Googled and started going through the iteration and going through to the point where she started seeing this one recruiter in human resources pop up. So she read one of his blogs. She thought, well, that sounds interesting. So she then saw another one of his blogs. So she read that. Then she started looking and she found a video that he had done that we had published or he had tweeted out. So she looked at that. So then she went on to LinkedIn and looked at his profile, came and looked at Lucas Group's website, and then she sent him a message and they had a 10-minute call. She says, you look like you know what you're doing. Lucas Group looks like they know what they're doing. And within 10 minutes, he secured 4 placement orders, which netted him over the next 3 months $170,000 in fees. Now, that was a 10-minute phone call, but that's not really where he did that. He did it through this content, through social engagement, through putting stuff out there, using Twitter, having a digital footprint or fingerprint or whatever, a persona out there that people can look at. And, Devon said, Gen Y and Gen Z really doesn't like to be sold to. I really don't think traditionalists and boomers and Gen X like to be sold to. They want to be listened to, which if you think about the methodology we created, is the first thing we do. And then they want to have a conversation. And they want you to address their needs. That's what it's about. And so I think those are 2 great points that you can have. You can work with your sales team and create a Social Selling in 7 to drive it. And then I wanted to give you guys of a real life example. We talked about data, but there was a great example there of having authentic human connections and driving traffic that actually ended up in revenue.
Well, cool, Scott. Thanks so much. I think we're going to take just a few minutes because there's some questions coming in. And Hillary, do you want to go ahead and maybe ask those questions?
Yeah, and definitely while we're answering some of these questions that have come in, please, ask questions actually on the GoToWebinar panel as well as on Twitter, and we'll make sure that Scott and Devon are able to answer them. So, Scott, this one's for you. What tools do you use to measure the lead gen?
Well, we use Insightpool. We use Radium One's data dashboard. We also use Conductor's our Searchlight tool that provides us a huge amount of data. We also use Google Analytics. And we really use our partners' tools that they provide for us, and then we use that kind of human intelligence that Devon talked about to kind of interpret them and then analyze that and then take that and then amplify off of each other.
Okay, cool. Then another question came in saying, there are so many tools. How do you narrow it down to this handful that you chose?
A lot of late night hours, researching, talking, and I'm not blowing smoke because we talk to a lot of partners. I mean, we're an SMB, and, we get 30 to 40, I get 30 to 40 calls a week from partners with snake oil salesmen, and, they make these outlandish things that we can increase your traffic. I think a couple of things. One, you have to go out there and research. With Insightpool, we actually sat down and talked with them. And you can kind of tell, when you're starting to pick a partner, it's great to look at their material and have their salespeople. But then at the end of the day, you need to go to their environment. And even though Insightpool only had, I think, 5 or 6 people at the time, you could tell that there was a certain energy, there was a certain innovation, there was a certain vision. And if they can't articulate their vision, their strategy, and how they're going to get there, then I don't care if they're 200 people, 5,000 people, or 5 people, then you should walk away. And so that's how I kind of look at it. Being able, if the executives or your team can articulate the vision, tell you their strategy to accomplish that, and then tell you the plan they're going to work you with to get that, and then provide you the data you're going to need and work with you, then you've got to have that face-to-face to kind of eventually make that, pull that trigger. So that's how we kind of determine who all of our partners are. And then as we bring on new partners, and we have a team of 35 partners now, along with a dozen writers, every one of those get interviewed by at least 5 or 6 of our other partners to see if they think it can work with them. So that's how we do it.
Cool. We got another question from Becca, and I think this goes to both Devon and Scott. How do I convince my boss that social media matters? How about you, Devon? How about you take it first?
I guess I'm in the fortunate position I don't have to convince my boss, but I do have to convince my investors. And it's really something that you have to almost answer. Again, it's where people are putting social media into a category. And the only reason it's in a category is because the boss is not social themselves, right? That's the only reason. I simply, retort back and would simply ask, do people matter? And do decision makers matter to our business? Just simply asking the same questions that fall in line with not this chasm of social media, but this chasm of people. Well, do decision makers matter? Do influencers matter? Does content matter? Asking those same questions, and then literally just pointing and saying, well, that's where all of that lives now. That all lives on social media. And it's not. It just simply, like BuzzFeed was talking about, that now 55% of their traffic is actually coming from social, not search engines. So, think about even when search engines came out, people were like, wait, why would I care about that? Now, people will, kill each other to get number 1 ranked on Google or any of those. But we're just in the earlier days where social is thought of as a category, and eventually it's not. It's simply going to be, that is where the audience is. So I think it's the simple questions that you ask that that the answers are, where, do people matter? Do decision makers matter, et cetera? And simply showing that that's where they hang out.
Yeah, and I think it's a great answer. And I just, like I said, I was a sales guy before, and I'm a simple guy, so I have to break things down that I can kind of understand. So I just kind of tell them a story, and I go, look, traditionalists are those guys that were born before 1946, right? And then boomers were born right around there. And most of the time, the executives that you're talking to, especially in Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 100 companies, they tend to be boomers. And maybe even a few of those are traditionalists. But the vast majority are boomers right now. And they don't get social media. And to Devon's point, they put it as a program or a tool, or they put it over here, or they think of it as something that their grandkids do, right? I tell them it's simply this, and this is how I approached our executives 6 or 7 years ago when we first started talking about this. It was simply this. I go, Gen Y has more in common with traditionalists than you do. And they go, how? And I go, think of it this way. Traditionalists and Gen Y, when you're a traditionalist or an older baby boomer, the way you heard about a restaurant that Devon was talking about, you were talking about going online and look at reviews. Well, you know how you found out in the old days? You found out at church, or you found out at the PTA, or you found out at the town square. And I go, social media has done nothing more than taking that small town square of small town USA and expanded it to a global. So that's what social is. Social is nothing more than a huge town square that people interact with now. And as to Devon's point, it's human intelligence. So when I'm talking to them, I go, just like traditionalists used to, and just like you used to go to the town square, find out about things, you now do it through social media. So to me, it's just a big virtual town square. And most of the time I find that they get that story pretty easily.
Great. We have 2 more questions. The next one is, what is your biggest frustration around demand gen?
Well, for me, it's always I want more leads. When we first got here, we were only getting 34 leads a month. And I said, I want 50. And then we finally broke 100. And now we're at, around a little north of over 300. And now I'm trying to get 400. The second biggest thing is educating, and this I think is the biggest frustration for marketers, is they give leads to salespeople, and then salespeople go, the leads are crap, right? They're not worth anything. And you're like, and I think they're expecting a nice blue box with a white ribbon on it, and it's a Tiffany's box, and all they have to do is open it up, and the buyer or potential buyer or prospect is like, oh, thank God, I was waiting for you to call me. I'm ready to sign the order right now. They're not expecting that they have to sell. And I think that's a big frustration. And then so what we've had to do from a marketing standpoint is, because we're going to be held responsible if the leads don't close, because then it's never the salesperson's fault that the lead didn't close. It was the leads were crapping. But oh, by the way, if they closed, it was all because of the salesperson's capability and their ability to close the deal. I mean, that's just the way of the world. That's how salespeople think, So what we've had to do is we've taken it a step further and said, okay, we're going to give you a lead, but we're going to take all of this content that we've created, and we're going to take it and align it to the sales process. So, and then also help them from a social media standpoint to generate leads and push things through to those clients and candidates. So an example I give is, when I tell people, when they're trying to prospect, we've taught salespeople how to use social media to sell. And, Devon tells a great story, but he just mentioned that if you see a phone number that you don't recognize, it goes to voicemail. I don't even answer my phone anymore, period, unless I know the number. Most people just text me. But my point is that if you teach salespeople how to go out and take your collateral, use social media to research, I could go out right now, if I was trying to call on Devon, I could go out on Twitter and Google, and within 3 minutes have enough research that I could send him a message that would gain his attention. And you know what I would do? I wouldn't send it via an email. I wouldn't send it through LinkedIn or anything like that. I would send him a direct or a message through Twitter. I'd follow him, and then I would send him a message. And I guarantee you, he's going to respond back. And that's what I tell people now. I am waiting for, like I said, sometimes I'll listen to the voicemails, and they all start out, and this is how you guys can help salespeople. Teach them to use social media to research their prospects and understand who they are. I mean, for myself, you could go online and in 3 minutes come up with a great message to me and send me a message. And so I think that's the big difference that, the social selling in 7 that I mentioned to you earlier, use that to teach your salespeople and get excited about social media and learning how to prospect better. And that's one of the big things I find interesting. I don't know about you, Devon, but that's what I love about it more than anything.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's a good point, like you mentioned, because each social media platform has its own uniqueness in its environment, right? So Twitter, I think, is a great example of that public town square, where it's kind of business casual, if you will. Facebook is an amazing social graph, so you're talking about your kids, etc. LinkedIn is obviously, it's almost like a professional data. It's like your modern day resume. But the reality is that I get 50 LinkedIn messages all the time, and all it is something about selling me something. And I'll use this one example. There's this kid that has been he wanted a job here, and he has tweeted himself in pictures with Insightpool, and then he I commented on it and so forth, and then he came back in and said, well, hey, I'd love to stop by sometime if you're there. And the whole point is that he was building a relationship to get an interview with the highest person at the company, even though he would have normally done, in the normal process, what he would have done is gone through the, normal apparatus of applying, but all of a sudden he got my attention and I sent it to the person and said, please speak to this, to this kid. And so, like, the reality is that the mechanism for doing it appropriately per channel is something to definitely consider. You probably wouldn't go on Facebook and try and sell somebody on B2B software while they're talking about their kids. Knowing what's appropriate and what's not makes a lot of sense.
Yes. Cool. Well, now I think Devon and Scott are going to get an influx of followers on Twitter after that. So one more question. If there was one takeaway or activity for me to take back to my marketing team or boss to help increase our demand gen, what would that be? For Scott.
Well, if you don't have Insightpool, I guess I would use. How's that for a plug? No, I think there's a couple things. I think one, the social selling in 7 is something that's been really a great success for us. But the other takeaway would be think of innovation not just as a tool, but also as a process, because that's where you can really get the attention of your C-suite. And the third thing too is I'm giving you 3 is simply this. Again, what I find for marketing people all the time is they like to talk about the what is it, how it works, and all the feeds and speeds. Start with the why and how it's going to have business impact. Find out what your financial metrics are that your CFO is reporting to, either to, Devon mentioned his investors. What are those metrics that the investors care about, or the board cares about, or the stockholders care about? And then align your marketing metrics and justify what you're doing to those metrics. And then keep it simple. Like I said, we do generate leads, drive deal velocity, expand wallet share. So that's about 4 tips that I would say I could take back.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. This was very insightful, and I know everybody's been following the Social Truth hashtag, and we'll continue to be tweeting out today on that. So definitely have more questions, and we will be sending out the recording and additional information via email. So thanks so much.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you, guys.